Part 2 of a study that we have entitled The Upcoming Asteroid Catastrophes. And so we turn to Isaiah chapter 5. I'd just like to report that after the Wednesday night service, I went home and I turned on the Discovery Channel only to find that they were having a special. I think it's about a 2-hour special on asteroids and comets and meteors, and about the past with regard to our Earth and the other planets round about it, and also where the asteroids are located. And we reported on that between Mars and Jupiter. It's called the asteroid belt. And also out beyond Pluto, there is another belt called the Kuiper belt where comets are. And they're just actually massive snowballs in space. And it was an interesting thing that they said that these particular objects are easily moved. They're easily influenced by the gravitational pull of, say, Jupiter and Mars, the sun, and that sort of thing. And that's what puts many of them in motion. And he said it wouldn't take but just almost the flick of a finger out there in space sometimes to get those things going toward the sun at thousands of miles per hour, actually. And they showed what they believe happened to the Earth with the extinction of dinosaurs. And of course, we too believe the very same thing, except the person that hit the Earth was Lucifer and the angels. However, we do believe that there were probably comets and asteroids hitting the planets back at that time, as we had exploding planets, and a battle for this solar system as all of the fallen angels began to regroup back at their headquarters on planet Earth. But anyway, we showed last time where the asteroids were, and that God is going to bring them, as it were, to the Earth. And in certain cases, as we will see, he will pinpoint exactly where these asteroids are going to fall. Now, the precedence is Joshua, when he went into the land with the 5 Amorite kings. And he couldn't get all of the soldiers because he didn't have enough men, so God just simply sent these asteroids, these great stones from the sky, and he killed all of the Amorite soldiers, not all of them, but the ones that were remaining that Joshua did not get. So there is the precedent. But asteroids are going to be used again by God to judge people on this planet. Now, before we look at those judgments, we have to see that there are 2 kinds of stars mentioned in the scriptures. Ones that are fixed. Now, these do not fall to earth. Some of those stars are bigger than our sun, and if they would fall to the earth, our planet would be battered to mere smithereens. They are fixed stars. However, they, because of certain things, do lose their ability to give light here on this earth. And then the next type of stars are falling stars. Jesus said that after the tribulation that the stars are going to fall from heaven. Well, which stars does he mean? He means the asteroids or the comets, meteorites that are directed to this planet as a means of judgment. All right? Chapter 5 in Isaiah and verse number 30. In that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of a sea. And if one look into the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. Now, something happens to the fixed stars. They have, for some reason, through the smoke and so forth that is sent up into the sky, an inability to penetrate that and send their light to earth. Now, again, in that day, that is the tribulation time. Ezekiel chapter 30. Ezekiel chapter 30 and verse number 3. Which says, For the day is near, even the day of the Lord is near. And this day of the Lord is a cloudy day. It shall be a time of the heathen. Now, I remember just a few weeks ago, we had a report with regard to Evansville stating that there were 14 consecutive days when the clouds were over our heads and we had no sun. And though they are so gloomy, it is so hard to get in gear and get moving whenever you have the gray skies out there. But think of the tribulation period when you have volcanoes and earthquakes and bombs and these other things, and the pillars of smoke, it says, we'll read it in a little bit, go up in the air and affect our atmosphere so that the very light of the fixed luminary bodies cannot penetrate into on our planet. All right, chapter 32, verse number 7. When I shall put thee out, I will cover the heaven and make the stars thereof dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. All the bright lights of heaven will I make dark over thee, and set darkness upon thy land. Again, all of these things are an explanation as to when the day of the Lord comes. It says, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light. You're not going to see the stars of heaven, and then the stars of heaven will fall. But you have to understand, Jesus is referring to two different categories of stars, ones that are fixed and the others that are not, ones that are like our sun and the others that are asteroids and comets. Joel chapter 2. Joel chapter 2 and verse 2. Well, let's back up to verse number 1, middle part of the verse. For the day of the Lord cometh, it is nigh at hand, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong, and therefore I will not read anymore, but I just wanted you to see that particular part of it. You talk about depression. You talk about making it difficult to get up in the morning, looking forward to the sunshine and the brightness of the day. You might as well forget it for most of the tribulation period, simply because of the thickness of the clouds caused by the ashes and debris in our atmosphere. Verse number 10. The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. When is this? Last part of verse 11. For the day of the Lord is great and terrible. Who can abide it? All right, we're still in the same chapter. Let's go to verse 30. And the sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Oh, excuse me, I read verse 31 instead of verse 30. I knew there were two verses there, but okay, let's go to verse 30. I will show wonders in heaven and in earth, blood and fire, and note this, pillars of smoke. Now, all of us have seen the mushroom cloud of an atomic explosion, with the fact that they call there can be a nuclear winter with all of the dust that is blown in our atmosphere. We have all seen volcanoes explode with thousands of tons of dirt and debris thrown up in our atmosphere and the like. So therefore, God is going to cause all these things to happen during that time so that the very light of the stars and the sun will not be seen. And many of us have already seen the moon turn various colors whenever it has dust and debris in the atmosphere. I remember whenever the Mount St. Helens exploded, and he went out, and it wasn't blood red, but it was an orangish color, and they said it's because of the dust caused by the volcano. All right, let's go to chapter 3 in Joel and verse number 15, where it says there, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars, these are the fixed stars, shall withdraw their shining. The Lord is going to roar out of Zion, utter his voice from Jerusalem. The heavens and the earth shall shake. And that's, again, part of the problem, but it's God caused. All right, we're over in Amos then, chapter 8, verse 9. Amos chapter 8 and verse 9. It shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon. I will darken the earth in a clear sky. Now there's one more portion that we want to see, and that is Revelation chapter 8. Revelation chapter 8. Now this is in association with the fourth angel who sounds the fourth trumpet. In verse number 12 it says, "And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, a third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise." And we covered all that territory just to have you keep in mind that on the one hand, there are fixed bodies like our sun, the moon, and the stars out there that are going to be darkened. That is that part of God's judgment for the earth. He will not let them shine their light in its fullness upon earth during that time. However, Jesus Christ said that the stars are going to fall from heaven. All right, well, do we believe that? Well, of course we do. Was he talking about the big fixed bodies out there? He is not. He's got to be talking about another category of star, and that is the asteroids. Now, what I have here are the time periods approximately of when these particular asteroids fall at the tribulation period. Turn with me to the battle of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse number 17. Now the battle of Gog and Magog, as you very well know, as we have studied before, happens right at the beginning of the tribulation period. Now, of course, there is a buildup of the armies that happens prior to that point. But the actual battle itself, we believe, is on the very first day of the tribulation period, or very close to it. Verse 17, "Thus says the Lord God, Art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants, the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them?" Now, this is God speaking to Russia and her satellites that come down from the north to Israel, Gog and Magog. "It shall come to pass at that same time when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, my fury shall come up in my face." We all understand that. That just simply means that God's face gets beat red. Have you ever seen anybody mad? Have you ever seen anybody get in flesh 4? Yes, and angry. Well, there are also those that can get angry in flesh 5 and not be unspiritual. Moses did that. Though he was the meekest man, when he got angry, he was still in flesh 5. And the Apostle Paul was the very same thing. He would speak harshly. He would come down hard. He could ridicule and criticize in a sanctified way, still be filled with the Spirit because of sin. "For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there's going to be a great shaking in the land of Israel." So it goes all the way down then to verse number 22. It tells of things that will happen to these soldiers in northern Israel. Now, mind you, out of all of the world that there is, northern Israel is just a small portion of it. And yet God is going to direct asteroids from thousands of miles in space to come to this very place and stone these people. Verse 22. I will plead against him with pestilence, with blood. I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon many people that are with him, an overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. The great hailstones there are an indication of asteroids or comets. Now, there is hail, and there is hailstones that happened in Egypt, but they were small hailstones. They still could kill people. They still could do enough damage. But when you're talking about great hailstones, you're talking about something from outer space, something bigger than what our atmosphere, a hailstone can only get so big because the atmosphere can't hold it up there. And the weight of the ice brings it down. But when you're talking about great hailstones, you're talking about something that is from outer space. Undoubtedly, the snowballs of outer space are comets or asteroids with their ice. That happens here at the beginning. All right? Let's go to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24. And in Matthew chapter 24, we have a reference to the end of the tribulation period. Now, you will remember our study that there are 75 days from the literal end of the tribulation period to the end of the 75 days, and it's one of those days wherein Jesus Christ comes back. But on one of those days, during these 75 days at the end of the tribulation period, or extended after the tribulation, God is going to stone some more people. Jesus makes reference to this in verse number 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, that's one of the 75 days, shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. Why? Because the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. The asteroids are going to be knocked loose. And therefore, because of that fact, God is going to begin sending them back down to earth, especially in a place called Armageddon. Now, let's go to the book of Revelation, chapter 6, which is an expanded version of Matthew 24. This is called the sixth seal of the seven-sealed book that Jesus Christ opens. And in the sixth seal, now you remember that the seven seals happen first, then the seven trumpets, then the seven vials. But what the sixth seal does is show us something in the future. It doesn't happen at exactly the time when the seal is open. What happens then is that a picture is drawn for us about something that's going to happen in the future. And that is in one of the 75 days. Verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth, the moon became as blood. Now, where did we just read that? Matthew chapter 24. Jesus said, following the tribulation, this is going to happen. The stars of heaven fell into the earth. These are the asteroids. Even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. This is when, verse 15, and you can correlate this to Revelation 19, where the kings of the earth join the beast and all of their armies confront Jesus Christ. And so just before Jesus Christ comes down and whips up on them with the sword of his mouth, guess what he sends to sort of weaken them, to sort of discourage them in their battle? He sends them a bunch of asteroids to kill many of them. This is where the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, and so forth, go to the dens and the rocks of the mountains, saying, fall on us, hide us from the face of the Lamb. The great day of his wrath is come. The great day of his wrath is the battle of Armageddon, and it happens in one of these days. So that's the second time. Let's go to chapter 8 in Revelation. Revelation chapter 8. And the trumpets are sounded, more or less, they straddle the middle part of the tribulation period. This is the second trumpet. And in Revelation 8, verse number 8, note, a second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. Now, again, with regard to this program that I saw on the Discovery Channel, they showed what would happen with asteroids of various sizes coming down through our atmosphere at thousands of miles per hour. They would literally, and that's more or less what they were saying, become burning mountains. Our atmosphere and the friction that's caused with bumping up against our atmosphere immediately will ignite these things. And they're coming so fast and they are so big and so heavy that they can hit and literally sink into the earth, several miles. And we have many of these meteorite craters or asteroid craters all over the earth. Some of them are in the sea. Some of them were so big that they actually went in and went through the water and went in and left an impression in the seabed. They were so big and hit so hard. And they gave the estimates as to the damage that it would do if something like that happened. That not only would it hurt just where they hit, but that there would be a shock wave going out hundreds of miles, killing everything. If it would hit close to New York City, it would level New York City and perhaps go all the way down to Philadelphia and what have you, just level these places. So that's what we're talking about here when it says, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. I wonder why. We're talking shock waves here. We all know what happens. Illegal fishermen go out and row out there and light a stick of dynamite and throw it in, and boom, and all of a sudden fish start coming up to the top. What happened? Well, the shock waves got them. The third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. All right, now we move from the second trumpet then to the third trumpet. Verse number 10. The third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell into the third part of the rivers and the third part of the waters. And the name of the star is wormwood. The third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Often, the scientists would say that these particular asteroids are made not just of stone and ice, but particular metals. Think of some of the poisonous type metals, like we talk about mercury, if we drank that, or lead, or what have you, were contained as ore in these particular things and began the process of melting as they were coming through the atmosphere, hit the waters and leached out into the waters. What would happen? The waters would become bitter, as it says, or poisonous, causing death and mass destruction. And that is what is going to happen here. So when they talk about, is there a possibility of asteroids coming, it's good TV. They can sell a lot of advertisements. People can get rich on it. But there are a lot of people who are going to die when it actually happens. All right? Let's go to chapter 18 now. Now, Revelation chapter 18. Now, at this point, I want to add one. I don't know how I missed it. I must be getting senile as I get up in years. I do not know. But I missed another stone from heaven coming down during this time. And this particular one, you can write it in, is at the judgment of Babylon or Rome. Now, you know our belief with regard to who Mystery Babylon is. Babylon itself is in Iraq. But Nebuchadnezzar's image extended all the way to Rome, and Mystery Babylon is Rome, and the harlot that rides upon the back of the kings of Mystery Babylon is the Roman Catholic Church. And right in the midst of the week, Antichrist himself gets rid of the Roman Catholic Church by having the kings, the leaders of those 10 countries, turn on the leaders of Catholicism and burn their flesh. In other words, they put a lot of believers to death through burning at the stake. So God just simply recompenses by having the kings of the earth, those 10 kings, turn on the Catholic Church and burn their flesh with fire. But there's another judgment upon Rome itself as a city. You see, Antichrist at this time has already moved his headquarters from Rome to Jerusalem. He is no longer needing the Roman Catholic Church, so he destroys it because he's looking at the temple in Jerusalem where he's going to be Messiah or Antichrist. He's going to be there instead of Christ. So he doesn't need Rome anymore. So God uses this also, not just to punish the leaders of the Roman Catholic Church, but to punish Rome for her persecution of Christians down through the years. So this happens pretty much in the midst of the week, the midst of the tribulation. Revelation 18:21. A mighty angel took up a stone, like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, "Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon." Now this is a reference to Rome. It's Rome that's destroyed. Jerusalem still has a history throughout the rest of the tribulation period. But in the midst of the week, Rome is no longer needed. Antichrist doesn't need Rome, needs the resources of Italy and her soldiers, but not the city of Rome that stood for the Roman Empire. We're now moving to Jerusalem, which stands for the capital city of the kingdom. And Antichrist wants to bring in a false kingdom before the true king and the true kingdom come. So, it says, verse number 23, "The light of a candle shall shine no more at all in you. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be no more heard at all in thee. Thy merchants were great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." Christian mysticism is found to the maximum in the Roman Catholic Church. In her was found the blood of the prophets, of the saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth. So therefore, with a great asteroid, evidently hitting the Aegean Sea close by, causing earthquakes, tidal waves, and the like, destroys the city of Rome. All right? One last one then in chapter 16. And let's look at verse number 13. It says, "I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet," and so forth. And the reason, verse 16, he was gathering them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. But before that happens, which is one of the 75 days after the tribulation period, the 7th vial is poured out. Now remember, you have here 7 seals that Jesus Christ opens. Some of those seals contain judgment. Some of those seals contain the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the white horse, the black horse, the red horse, the pale horse, and the like, all indicating certain things happening to the world at that time. The 5th seal, it is the tribulation martyrs during the first half of the tribulation, waiting for their other brethren to be martyred. And then the 6th seal, which is a picture of the battle of Armageddon, when the sun will be darkened, the moon shall not show her light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and we saw that. So, in conjunction with the trumpets, we have asteroids coming down, and then we have one special judgment with a big asteroid coming down and hitting close to Rome, which is the great city called Babylon in prophetic symbolism. But now we're coming through the trumpets, and we're coming through the vials. The vials are poured out, and there are all sorts of plagues that hit men. But one of the plagues in the vials has to do with asteroids. The seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and they carried out a great voice from the temple of heaven, from the throne, saying, "It's done." And there were voices and thunders and lightnings. There was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake that the great city, now this is a reference to Jerusalem, was divided into three parts. The cities of the nations fell. In other words, it shook the whole earth. Great Babylon came in remembrance before God. Now, remember, we just read that in chapter 18. This is 16, where this is prior to that judgment here. Note, every island fled away, the mountains were not found, and there fell upon men, note, a great hail out of heaven. Once again, the Greek word ek means that it was from outer space. It was not just a regular hailstorm. Every stone about the weight of a talent, and talentios in the Greek means that it's approximately 100 or to 110 pounds. Every weight of the stone was a talent, and men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, for the plague thereof was exceeding great. All right, let's recap and end. There are in place in our own solar system the very implements that God is going to use to judge this world. Some of these implements, of course, are on the earth with regard to earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes, hurricanes, and the like. But the ones in our solar system are either comets or asteroids. And at least, what do we have here? 6 different occasions he uses them. The Battle of Armageddon. Russia is going to be stoned to death with regard to her soldiers on the northern hills of Israel. The stones are undoubtedly comets or asteroids. There are going to be judgments upon the sea and upon the waters in the continents with some more asteroids, 2 big ones. The one in the sea kills a third part of the creatures. The one hitting the waters destroys a lot of people because it leaches out and poisons the waters. In the midst of the week, a mighty stone as a great millstone is thrown down and obviously into the sea, causing a tidal wave and earthquakes, leveling the city of Rome. Then you have, toward the end here, one that is directed more or less toward the soldiers in Jerusalem and the surrounding area. And these are 100 pounds each. Could you imagine standing there with your rifle and all of a sudden looking up and you have a 100-pound hailstone headed towards you at 1,000 miles per hour? You can't get out of the way. What can you do? The only thing you can do is just gulp, and as you are being driven feet first into the ground, about 6 feet under. Then the last and the worst of them all, predicted by Jesus Christ himself, the stars will fall from heaven to such an extent that the soldiers and kings, rich, poor alike, that are gathered together against Jesus Christ on one of these 75 days will see him coming, run like the wind to the caves of the earth, saying, "Cover us from the wrath of the Lamb."